Ethan had always dreamed of exploring space. He grew up hearing stories of distant planets, colorful star systems, and strange alien species. But being from Earth, he never imagined his life would take a turn that would lead him into that world. He was just a regular guy, working a normal job at the city's busiest spaceport, helping with the operations of incoming ships. His life was comfortable but unremarkable. One quiet morning, as Ethan walked through the bustling market of the spaceport, his eyes scanned the various items being sold: alien technology, exotic foods, and strange trinkets from across the galaxy. He'd seen it all 1,000 times, yet it still filled him with a sense of wonder. He was lost in thought when he suddenly bumped into someone. The impact wasn't hard, but it startled him. He looked up quickly and found himself staring into the eyes of a girl unlike anyone he had ever seen before. She was tall, with skin the color of soft moonlight, her eyes a deep, shimmering shade of violet. Her long hair flowed around her shoulders, a silvery blue hue that sparkled slightly as the light hit it. She had delicate features, but her eyes, full of wisdom and mystery, seemed to hold a story of their own. "Oh, I'm sorry," Ethan muttered. Stepping back, the girl smiled at him, a soft and genuine smile that made his heart skip a beat. "It's all right," she said, her voice melodic, almost like music. "I wasn't paying attention." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Ethan felt like he had frozen in time, his words caught in his throat. She was an alien, yet her presence felt so natural, so familiar, as if they were meant to meet. I didn't mean to bump into you," Ethan stammered, feeling a bit foolish. The girl laughed, a light and airy sound that made Ethan smile without even trying. "It's fine," she repeated. "I'm Lyra, Ethan," he replied, still feeling a little nervous. He cleared his throat. "So, where are you from?" "From a distant star system," she said, her smile never fading. "But I'm here on business. And you?" "I work here," Ethan said, gesturing vaguely at the spaceport around them. "I help with the ships." Her eyes sparkled with interest. "How fascinating," she said, tilting her head slightly. "I've never met a human before. You must know a lot about this place." Ethan couldn't help but laugh, despite himself. "I know a bit, but there's so much more to learn. I'm just a small part of the bigger picture." Lyra's smile grew wider. "I think I'd like to learn more about you, Ethan." Ethan's heart skipped again. But before he could say anything, she was already stepping back. "It was nice meeting you," she said, her voice still warm and inviting. "Maybe I'll see you again." Ethan nodded, feeling the sudden urge to say something more, but she had already turned away. Disappearing into the crowd, he stood there for a moment, staring at the spot where she had just been. His mind raced, but it was hard to put into words how he felt. He couldn't explain it. Something about her presence had left a lasting impression on him. The rest of the day passed in a blur for Ethan. He tried to focus on his work, but Lyra's face kept appearing in his thoughts. He couldn't stop thinking about her violet eyes, the way she smiled, and how effortless it felt to talk to her. But he knew he had to let it go. She was from another world, after all. There was no way someone like her could be interested in a regular guy like him. But life had a funny way of proving him wrong. Later that week, Ethan was at his usual post in the spaceport when an official-looking messenger arrived with an envelope. The messenger handed it to him without a word, and Ethan stared at the strange seal on the front. It was a symbol he didn't recognize, but it seemed somehow familiar. He tore open the envelope and pulled out a single sheet of paper. The letter read, "Dear Ethan, I hope this letter finds you well. I am Lyra, from the Galanthian star system. I would like to invite you to attend a gathering hosted by the Galactic Council. It would be an honor to meet you again. I've been curious about you ever since our brief encounter, and I believe you possess something rare. Please, consider my invitation. With respect." Ethan's heart raced as he read the letter. Again, he couldn't believe it. She wanted to meet him. A part of him wanted to dismiss it as a mistake. But deep down, he knew this was no accident. Lyra had chosen him. A mix of excitement and nervousness filled him as he set the letter down. This was no ordinary invitation, and this was no ordinary alien. Ethan had no idea where this would lead, but something told him this was only the beginning. Ethan couldn't stop thinking about the letter from Lyra. Since receiving it, his mind had been racing. An invitation to meet with her again. He couldn't believe it. A part of him thought it might be a mistake, but deep down, he knew this was no accident. She wanted to see him, and that thought filled him with excitement. The next day, Ethan found himself walking toward the Galactic Council's meeting hall, his heart pounding in his chest. He had never been inside such a place before. The building was enormous, with tall, shining columns and walls that seemed to shimmer in the light. It was clear that this was a place of power and importance. He stood outside for a moment, feeling small in comparison to the grandeur of the building. He had no idea what to expect. But one thing was certain: this was going to be a day he would never forget. As he entered the hall, the air felt different. The space was filled with alien beings of all shapes and sizes, their voices echoing off the walls as they discussed matters of galactic importance. Ethan felt out of place, but then his eyes caught a familiar sight: Lyra. She stood at the front of the room, surrounded by a group of powerful beings. Her presence seemed to command attention. As she spoke to the group, her voice was calm, yet there was an undeniable strength in it. She looked so different from the girl he had met in the spaceport. Here, she was not just an alien girl, she was someone important, someone who held power in the galaxy. Lyra's eyes scanned the room, and when she saw Ethan, her expression softened. She excused herself from the conversation and made her way toward him, her long, flowing hair shimmering as she moved. When she reached him, she smiled, and Ethan felt his nerves ease, as if everything around him had faded away. "I'm glad you came, Ethan," she said, her voice warm and inviting. "I was hoping to see you again." Ethan smiled back, feeling a strange mix of awe and nervousness. "I didn't expect this. It's a little overwhelming." Lyra laughed softly, a sound that made Ethan's heart skip a beat. "I understand, but don't worry. You're not here by accident. I wanted to meet you again. There's something about you that I can't explain." Ethan's heart raced at her words. "Something about me? I don't understand." "I know it's hard to explain," Lyra continued, her gaze steady. "But I felt something when we met. Something different, something real. And I don't want to ignore it." Ethan wasn't sure what to say. He had never thought of himself as anything special. He was just a regular human. But standing in front of Lyra, he couldn't help but feel that there was something more between them. Something he hadn't noticed before. Before he could respond, a voice interrupted them. "Lyra, what is this? A human? You've invited a human to the council." The voice was deep and cold, and it made Ethan feel uneasy. Ethan turned to see a tall, imposing alien with blue skin and sharp features. His eyes narrowed as he looked at Ethan, clearly displeased. Lyra's expression didn't change. "Yes, I invited him. Is that a problem?" The alien, who seemed to be a high-ranking member of the council, scoffed. "You know what this means, don't you? Bringing a human here, especially one with no status, can only bring trouble. The galaxy isn't ready for this." Ethan felt a surge of discomfort, but Lyra stood firm. "I don't care what the galaxy is ready for. This is my choice." The alien's eyes flickered with anger, but he didn't press the matter further. He turned and walked away, muttering under his breath. Ethan felt a little shaken by the encounter, but Lyra's presence calmed him. "Don't mind him," she said softly. "Some of them don't understand, but I do, and that's what matters." Ethan nodded, grateful for her words. "I don't know why I'm here, Lyra. I'm just a regular guy. I'm not like them." Lyra smiled again, her violet eyes softening. "That's exactly why I want you here. You're different, Ethan. You don't play by their rules, and I respect that." For the first time, Ethan felt like he was part of something bigger. He had always felt out of place on Earth, never quite fitting in. But standing here with Lyra, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Over the next few hours, Ethan stayed by Lyra's side, watching as she moved through the council's discussions. She seemed so confident, so at ease in her role. It was clear that she was a force to be reckoned with, but despite her power, she remained kind and open to him, never once making him feel small or insignificant. As the meeting came to a close, Lyra turned to Ethan with a smile. "Thank you for coming. I know this isn't easy, but I wanted you to see who I am. And now, I want you to understand that I choose you. I want to get to know you better." Ethan's heart swelled with emotion. For the first time, he felt like he was truly seen, not just as a human from Earth, but as someone important in his own right. "I don't know what this all means," Ethan said, his voice filled with uncertainty. "But I'm glad I met you, Lyra. I don't know where this will go, but I want to find out." Lyra's smile deepened, and for the first time, Ethan saw the vulnerability in her eyes. "Me too, Ethan, me too." Ethan woke up the next morning with a feeling he couldn't shake off. The events of yesterday felt like a dream. Lyra, the invitation, the council. It was all so surreal. But when he looked around his small apartment, he knew it was real. The message from Lyra was still fresh in his mind, and he couldn't stop thinking about her. Today was going to be different. Today, he would be part of something bigger than himself. But as exciting as it was, there was also an undercurrent of unease. He was about to face the most powerful beings in the galaxy, and all of them were vying for Lyra's attention. But why? Why would someone like her choose a regular human like him? As Ethan made his way to the Galactic Hall, he couldn't help but notice how different everything seemed now. The towering alien ships, the holographic displays, the busy workers rushing around, it all felt like a different world. A world he wasn't sure he belonged to. But when he reached the entrance, he saw Lyra waiting for him. Her smile as warm and welcoming as ever. Her presence made everything feel right again. "Good morning, Ethan," she greeted him. "Are you ready?" Ethan smiled back, trying to shake off the nervousness that had crept in. "I think so, but I don't know what to expect." "You'll be fine," Lyra said, her voice reassuring. "Just be yourself. That's why I chose you." Ethan followed her inside, and his eyes widened in awe. The room was grander than anything he had ever seen. It was filled with beings from all over the galaxy, tall, short, humanoid, and alien. Some were elegant, others intimidating, but they all seemed to turn their heads as Lyra walked in, clearly making her presence known. Ethan felt small in comparison to them. He wasn't sure how he had ended up in this place, but he was here now, and he wasn't about to back down. Lyra led him to a table where a group of aliens had gathered. At first glance, they seemed like a mix of diplomats, warriors, and scholars, each with their own purpose. But it was clear that they were all there for one thing: to impress Lyra. As they approached, a tall alien with blue skin and sharp features stood up. He was wearing a suit of polished armor, and his gaze was cold and calculating. Ethan felt an uneasy shiver run down his spine. "Lyra," the alien said with a slight bow, "I see you've brought a human with you. How curious." Lyra didn't seem fazed by his tone. "This is Ethan," she said, her voice calm and confident. "He's someone I wanted to introduce to you all." The other aliens at the table looked at Ethan with varying degrees of interest. Some seemed curious, others amused. Ethan felt like he was under a microscope, but Lyra stood by him, her presence unwavering. The blue-skinned alien, who Ethan guessed was some kind of leader, gave him a long, hard look. "Tell me, human, what makes you so special? Why did Lyra choose you over the others?" His voice was low and menacing, and it made Ethan feel like he was being judged. Ethan hesitated, unsure of what to say. He wasn't a politician, and he didn't have the experience or power these beings had. But he had to speak up. He couldn't let Lyra down. "I don't know why she chose me," Ethan said, his voice steady despite the nerves. "I'm just me, but I think she sees something that others might not, and that's why I'm here." The blue-skinned alien scoffed, "Charming, but let's see if you can back up your words." He turned to Lyra, his tone more respectful. "Now, we'll see how long this human can last in our world." Lyra's eyes narrowed, but she didn't say anything. Instead, she guided Ethan to a seat next to her. and they joined the rest of the council for their discussions. As the meeting went on, Ethan couldn't help but feel like a pawn in a game. He didn't fully understand. The discussions were complex, involving trade agreements, military alliances, and political power plays. He felt out of place, like an outsider in a world he wasn't prepared for. But Lyra kept him close, always reassuring him with a glance or a soft word. Despite the pressure, he felt a strange sense of calm when she was near. It was like he wasn't alone in this after all. Hours passed, and the meeting seemed to drag on. Ethan's mind started to wander as he listened to the heated debates around him. But then, the blue-skinned alien spoke again, his voice cutting through the noise. "We should have a challenge," he said. "A test of skill. Let's see if this human can survive the trials of the galaxy. If he can, perhaps he is worthy of your attention, Lyra." Ethan looked at Lyra, unsure of what to do. She seemed unfazed, but there was a glint of something. In her eyes, a hint of amusement, maybe, or perhaps something more. She turned to the council, her voice calm yet firm. "I'll accept your challenge," she said, "but on one condition. Ethan will be the one to choose how the challenge is conducted." The room fell silent. The other aliens seemed surprised, but none dared to speak up. Ethan's heart raced. He had no idea what kind of challenge this was going to be, but he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't back down now. Lyra had chosen him, and no matter what happened, he wasn't going to let her down. The challenge was set. The council had agreed to let Ethan decide how he would prove his worth. But now he was faced with a dilemma. How could he, a simple human, compete with some of the most powerful beings in the galaxy? The pressure was mounting, and he wasn't sure what kind of test he should choose. But as he stood in front of Lyra, the weight of the moment hit him. "What should I do?" Ethan asked, his voice tinged with uncertainty. Lyra looked at him with those knowing eyes, her calm presence a source of strength for him. "Don't worry about it. You don't need to be like them. Just be yourself." Ethan nodded, still unsure of what to do. He knew that this challenge wasn't just about physical strength or intelligence. It was about something deeper, a test of character, of who he was as a person. And Lyra had chosen him for a reason, even if he didn't fully understand it yet. The council members waited in silence, their eyes fixed on Ethan. The blue-skinned leader, who had been so dismissive of him earlier, spoke again. "Well, human, have you decided?" His tone was still sharp, but there was a hint of curiosity now. Ethan took a deep breath and looked at Lyra. She gave him a small, encouraging smile. In that moment, he knew what he had to do. "I choose a test of trust," Ethan said, his voice steady. "A test where we must rely on each other. No tricks, no lies, just trust." The room fell silent. The blue-skinned leader raised an eyebrow. "Trust? That's your challenge?" Ethan nodded. "Yes, trust is something that's hard to earn and easy to break. I think that's the most important thing here. If we can't trust each other, then everything else is meaningless." Lyra's eyes softened as she looked at Ethan. "I couldn't agree more." The council members exchanged glances, some of them clearly skeptical. The leader of the council, who had been the most critical, spoke again. "Very well, human. If that is your choice, then we will see if trust is enough." A few of the other council members murmured, clearly not understanding what Ethan was trying to prove. But Lyra stood by his side, her unwavering support giving him the courage he needed. The challenge was set. The council members were tasked with a series of trials. But the twist was simple. Each trial would require them to trust their partner completely. There would be no room for deception, no room for second-guessing. Each member had to rely on the others to succeed. Ethan's heart raced as he watched the first challenge unfold. The council members had to navigate a dangerous obstacle course, and they were paired up with different partners. The challenge wasn't just about physical strength, but also about working together, trusting the other to make the right decisions. Lyra's partner, a tall and powerful alien from a distant planet, seemed confident, but Ethan saw the look of doubt in his eyes as he struggled to make decisions that affected both of their lives. Lyra, on the other hand, was calm and collected. She moved through the obstacles with ease, trusting her instincts and the decisions made by her partner. Ethan couldn't help but admire her strength. She wasn't just physically powerful, she was emotionally intelligent, able to read the situation and trust her partner's choices. That's when it clicked for him. This was why Lyra had chosen him. It wasn't just about his physical abilities or his quick thinking. It was about something deeper, his ability to trust and connect with others on a fundamental level. As the challenges continued, Ethan found himself paired with a few different council members. The first one, an older alien with large, glowing eyes, was skeptical of Ethan at first. But as they faced each trial together, Ethan's trust in his partner grew, and he could feel the same trust being built in return. The trials weren't easy, but Ethan had something they didn't. He knew how to rely on others, and he knew how to build trust. By the time the final trial arrived, Ethan felt a sense of pride. He had made it this far, and he had proven that trust was more than just a simple word. It was a bond that could be created and strengthened, even in the most difficult of circumstances. And as he stood beside Lyra, ready to face the final challenge, he realized that he had already won. It wasn't about the council's approval. It wasn't about winning the trials. It was about the connection they had built, the trust they had shared, and the understanding that had grown between them. Lyra turned to him, her eyes filled with respect. "You did it," she said, her voice soft but filled with pride. Ethan smiled. "We did it together." The final trial was the most difficult. They had to face a simulation of a galactic battle, where each participant was required to make decisions in the heat of the moment. The stakes were high, but Ethan and Lyra's trust in each other was the key to their success. Together, they navigated the chaos, making decisions quickly and without hesitation. And in the end, they emerged victorious. As the trial came to an end, the council members were silent. They had watched as Ethan and Lyra proved that trust was more powerful than any weapon or strategy. They had worked together as a team, relying on each other completely. The blue-skinned leader nodded, finally acknowledging the strength of Ethan's choice. "You've shown us something, human. Trust is indeed powerful." Lyra turned to Ethan, her eyes filled with admiration. "You did it, Ethan. You showed them all what really matters." Ethan smiled, feeling a sense of peace he had never known before. This wasn't about winning. It wasn't about the council's approval. It was about something deeper, something that would last far beyond this trial. And as he stood there with Lyra, he realized that they had built something that no one could take away. A bond built on trust, understanding, and respect. The days after the challenge were filled with quiet moments of reflection for Ethan. He had earned the respect of the council, and the relationship he had with Lyra was growing stronger by the day. But despite the victories they had shared, a shadow of danger hung over them. Lyra's position as a leader in the galaxy made her a target for many, and it was becoming clear that not everyone was pleased with her choices. The more Ethan saw of the political games and power struggles, the more he understood that he had stepped into a world far more dangerous than anything he had ever imagined. Lyra's strength was undeniable, but the forces against her were growing more determined. One evening, as Ethan and Lyra sat together in her private chambers, a message arrived, a warning from one of Lyra's trusted allies. "We need to leave now," Lyra said, her voice filled with urgency as she looked at the message on her holo screen. "It's not safe here anymore." Ethan felt his heart skip a beat. "What's happening?" "They found us," Lyra said, her eyes narrowing. "The council members who opposed me, they've made their move. They want to take control, and they'll stop at nothing to do it." Ethan stood up, his mind racing. "What do we do?" Lyra didn't hesitate. "We run, but we can't do it alone." They quickly made their way to the escape shuttle, where Lyra's most trusted guards were waiting. The shuttle was small but fast, capable of getting them to safety on a remote planet, far from the council's reach. As the shuttle took off, Ethan looked out the window, his thoughts racing. Everything had been moving so quickly. He had gone from an ordinary man on Earth to a key player in galactic politics, and now he was on the run. Lyra sat beside him, her face set in determination. But Ethan could see the worry in her eyes. for the first time since he had met her. She seemed vulnerable. "I never wanted this," Lyra said quietly, almost to herself. "I never wanted to be part of their games, but they forced me into it." Ethan looked at her, his heart going out to her. He had seen her strength, her confidence, but now he saw that she carried a heavy burden. "You didn't choose this," he said softly, "but you've done what you had to do, and you've done it well." Lyra smiled, though it was a sad smile. "Maybe, but it's not enough. There are too many who want to see me fail, too many who want to control me." Ethan's grip on her hand tightened. "You don't have to face this alone. I'm with you." Her eyes met his, and for a moment, it felt like time had stopped. Lyra nodded slowly, her expression softening. "Thank you, Ethan. You don't know how much that means to me." As the shuttle made its way toward the remote planet, they both knew that things were only going to get more complicated. But for the first time, Ethan felt like they were in this together, like they could face whatever came next. The planet they landed on was isolated, a place far from the reach of the Council and its politics. But it wasn't just a hiding place. Lyra had a small group of loyal followers there, individuals who had pledged their allegiance to her long ago. They were the ones who would help them plan their next steps. The group had prepared a safe house, a hidden base deep in the planet's force. It was a place where Lyra and Ethan could regroup and figure out their next move. But as soon as they arrived, they were met with news that sent a chill down Ethan's spine. "They're coming for us," Lyra's ally, a tall alien named Zer, said as he approached them. "The Council knows you're here, and they've sent their most trusted forces after you." Ethan felt his heart race. "What do we do now?" Lyra turned to Zer, her voice steady despite the fear that threatened to creep in. "We fight. We won't run anymore. I've had enough of hiding." Zer nodded, his face grim. "We've prepared for this. We've gathered forces. But it will take everything we have." Ethan could see the determination in Lyra's eyes. She wasn't going to back down. She had spent too much of her life running from the politics and manipulation of the galaxy. Now, she was ready to take a stand. Over the next few days, they began to prepare for the fight ahead. Ethan helped as much as he could, but he was still learning about the complexities of warfare and tactics in the galaxy. His role, however, wasn't just about fighting. It was about being there for Lyra, supporting her in whatever way he could. Late one night, as they sat together in the safe house, Lyra looked at Ethan with a serious expression. "This is it," she said quietly. "We're about to face the most dangerous forces in the galaxy. I don't know what will happen, but I need you to know that I trust you." Ethan felt a surge of emotion. He had never felt more connected to her than in this moment. "I trust you too, Lyra, and I'll be here, no matter what." Lyra smiled, her eyes softening. "You're the one thing that's kept me grounded in all of this chaos. I'm not alone anymore." Ethan smiled back, feeling a warmth spread through him. No matter what happened, he knew they were in this together. The battle that awaited them would be fierce, but Ethan was no longer just a bystander. He was a part of something bigger now, something worth fighting for. The night was still, the air thick with tension. The quiet of the remote planet felt strange after all the chaos they had just endured. Lyra stood at the edge of the small camp, staring up at the stars. Ethan joined her, his footsteps light on the soft ground. The silence between them was comfortable, but they both knew something was coming. They were preparing for the final confrontation, the one that would determine not just their futures, but the future of everything they had fought for. "We'll be ready," Lyra said, her voice steady. But there was an edge to it, a hint of something that told Ethan this wasn't just another battle. This was different. This time, it was about more than just survival. Ethan looked at her, the weight of the moment settling on him. "How did it come to this?" he asked quietly. "I thought we were past this kind of thing." Lyra turned her head slightly, her eyes soft in the starlight. "The galaxy doesn't let you be free, Ethan. It never has, and I've been trying to change that, but some forces won't allow it. They want power, and they'll stop at nothing to get it." Ethan nodded, understanding more than ever why she had chosen him. He wasn't just a part of this battle. He was a symbol of what Lyra wanted for the galaxy: freedom, choice, and peace. And in that, he realized that his fight was just as important as hers. The sound of footsteps broke the silence, and Zer appeared, his face grim but resolute. "They're getting closer," he said, his voice low. "The Council's forces have mobilized. It won't be long before they reach us." Lyra's expression hardened. Then it's time to act. They had been preparing for this moment for days, gathering allies, fortifying their position, and creating a plan that would give them a chance to fight back. It wasn't going to be easy. The Council's forces were massive, well-equipped, and ruthless. But Lyra wasn't backing down, and neither was Ethan. "I've never fought in a war before," Ethan said, his voice full of uncertainty. "I don't know if I'm cut out for this." Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch warm and reassuring. "You've already done more than I could have hoped for. It's not about being a soldier, Ethan. It's about standing for what's right. And you've shown that you're more than capable of doing that." Ethan met her eyes, the weight of her words settling on him. He wasn't just fighting for himself or even for her. He was fighting for a future where people could live freely, without the constant threat of control and manipulation. And that was a cause worth fighting for. As the day wore on, the tension in the air grew thicker. Ethan, Lyra, and their allies moved quickly, preparing for the battle ahead. There were no grand speeches, no momentous declarations, just the quiet understanding that what they were about to face could be the end of everything they had worked for. When the first wave of enemies arrived, it was unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. The Council's forces were vast, their soldiers moving with precision and deadly intent. But they were met with resistance. Lyra's allies, though fewer in number, were fierce and determined. They had been preparing for this day for years, and now it was time to fight for everything they believed in. Ethan found himself in the midst of the chaos, his heart pounding in his chest. The sounds of blaster fire and explosions filled the air. But he kept his focus. He wasn't alone. Lyra was by his side, leading their group with strength and unwavering resolve. As they pushed forward, Ethan realized that this wasn't just a battle of weapons. It was a battle of wills. The Council's forces had power, yes, but they lacked the unity and the belief that Lyra's allies had. They fought not just for survival, but for freedom. In the midst of the chaos, Ethan found himself face to face with one of the Council's high-ranking soldiers. The soldier was large, his armor gleaming under the dim light. He raised his weapon, but before he could fire, Lyra was there, blocking his shot with her own weapon. The two exchanged blows, their movements quick and precise. But Lyra's skill and determination were unmatched. Ethan moved forward, helping to take down another soldier, but he couldn't help but glance back at Lyra. She was in her element, her power and grace evident as she fought. She wasn't just the leader of the resistance. She was a force to be reckoned with, and Ethan was proud to be fighting beside her. As the battle raged on, it became clear that they were making progress. The Council's forces were retreating, their morale breaking as Lyra and her allies pushed them back. But Ethan knew that this wasn't over yet. The real challenge was still to come, the final confrontation with the leader of the Council, the one who had orchestrated this war and whose power threatened everything they had worked for. Hours passed, and the battle seemed to go on forever. But finally, as the sun began to set, the fighting slowed. The Council's forces had been defeated. Their leader had been overthrown, and for the first time in a long while, Lyra and her allies could breathe. Ethan stood by her side, his heart still racing. He had fought. He had stood beside her, and together they had won. But it wasn't just a victory on the battlefield. It was a victory for freedom, for choice, for the belief that they could shape their own future. Lyra turned to him, her eyes tired but full of pride. "We did it, Ethan," she said softly. Ethan smiled, feeling a sense of relief wash over him. "We did," and for the first time in a long while, it felt like they had truly won, together. The battle was over. The dust settled, and the once chaotic landscape began to quiet. The ground was marked with signs of the fierce fighting craters from explosions, broken weapons, and the bodies of those who had fought and fallen. But through it all, Lyra and her allies stood victorious. Ethan looked around at the aftermath of the battle, his heart still racing from the adrenaline. He had never imagined himself in a situation like this back on Earth. His biggest worries were simple work, relationships, and his future. But now, he had faced the most powerful forces in the galaxy, and he had stood beside Lyra, the woman who had changed everything for him. The weight of their victory was both heavy and light, as if the world was finally at peace. But they had earned it through blood, sweat, and tears. Lyra stood beside him, her face tired but filled with pride. Her armor was scratched and dirtied from the fight, but her eyes shone with an inner light. She had led them to victory. Her strength, both physical and emotional, had inspired everyone around her, including Ethan. Ethan stepped forward, joining her. "It's over, isn't it?" he asked softly, his voice full of disbelief. Lyra nodded, her eyes scanning the horizon where the Council's forces had retreated. "It's over. But it's not the end, Ethan. We've only just begun." Her words echoed in Ethan's mind. He had expected the battle to be the climax of their struggle. But Lyra was right. This was just the beginning of a new chapter, one that would take them beyond the war, beyond the Council, and into a future where they could finally shape their own destiny. "We fought for this freedom," Lyra continued. "But now, we have to rebuild. We have to show the galaxy what we stand for." Ethan glanced around at the people gathered near them, the survivors, the fighters, and the ones who had joined their cause were all standing tall. Some were injured, some exhausted, but they all shared the same sense of accomplishment. They had won not just for themselves, but for the future of the galaxy. "We'll rebuild," Ethan said, his voice firm. Together, Lyra smiled at him, the warmth in her expression reassuring him that they were indeed in this together. Yes, together. "We'll make sure that the future is better than the past." The path ahead was unclear, but the more Ethan thought about it, the more he realized how much had changed in such a short time. A few weeks ago, he had been a regular human, living a quiet life on Earth. Now, he was part of something much larger, something that mattered. He wasn't just a bystander in Lyra's world. He was a part of it. As the days passed, the team began to regroup and rebuild. They cleared the battlefield, tending to the wounded and burying the fallen. The galaxy, once so divided and controlled by power-hungry leaders, now had a chance for a fresh start. And Lyra, with Ethan by her side, was ready to lead them into that new future. Ethan worked alongside the others, helping to establish communication with various planets and systems. Their victory had already begun to inspire others. Many worlds, once hesitant to join the fight, were now reaching out, offering support and pledging to stand with Lyra and her cause. The old alliances were crumbling, and new ones were being formed. One evening, as they sat together around a campfire, Ethan turned to Lyra, his heart full of emotion. "I never thought I'd be part of something like this, but now it feels like I've found where I belong." Lyra looked at him, her eyes soft and understanding. "You've always belonged, Ethan. You just didn't know it yet." He smiled, feeling the weight of her words settle in his chest. He had come a long way from the man who had once felt out of place, unsure of his place in the universe. Now, standing beside Lyra, he felt a sense of purpose he had never known before. "There's still so much to do," Lyra said, her voice full of determination. "But now we have a chance, a real chance." Ethan nodded. "And we'll take it." The stars above them twinkled in the vastness of space, a reminder of how far they had come. The galaxy, once ruled by fear and oppression, was now on the brink of change. Lyra's victory had opened the door to a new era, one where people could live freely and without fear of control. The road ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges, obstacles, and struggles. But with Lyra by his side, Ethan knew they could face anything. They had fought for this moment, and they would fight for the future. As the fire crackled and the others gathered around, Lyra turned to Ethan, her expression serious but filled with hope. "We've done it, Ethan. Now we have to make sure the galaxy knows that we can do better, that we can be better." Ethan smiled, his heart swelling with pride. "We will, Lyra, we will." And with that, They both knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. They had won the battle. But the true test was just beginning, and in each other. They had found the strength to face whatever challenges the future would bring.